check your pH. Everybody familiar with what pH is? It's how acidic or how alkaline something is. Plants like about 6.0. Fish like 8.0. So what do we do? 7.0. We keep it neutral. That's one of our compromises. So what I'd like for you to do, sir, is take a pH test. Kind of rinse this out in the fish tank, get it cleaned out a little bit, and then fill that up to the line with our fish water. All right. How close are you? Perfect. You're good. All right. So the pH test, this thing, you have to get this if you're doing aquaponics. This is only 33 bucks and it does all the testing you need on a hobby basis. I've actually run large systems with just this, but there's better technology for it. So add 3 drops of your pH test solution to that vial. All right. And then put that cap on and give it a shake.
And how often do you test it?
pH is each day.
Okay.
You want to keep, because what happens is all the bacteria that are making everything work, and I'll go through that here on our next step, should be producing an acidic effect on the water. Nitrifying bacteria consume alkaline ions as they do their work, and that drops your pH. So a healthy aquaponics system will have a steadily decreasing pH, so I'll always have to bring up. So look on this pH scale, just this first line, and tell me what you get.
About 7 to 7.2.
All right, so we're right where we want to be. Now, if your pH is low and you need to bring it up, you want to use two different things. So I'm glad you're recording this. You might want to share it with everybody.
Sure. Okay.
So basically, the fish produce 10 out of the 13 nutrients required for plant growth. The ones that they don't provide in sufficient quantities are potassium, calcium, and iron. So we have to supplement those nutrients in order to get healthy plant growth. Now, the pH is always dropping, so you got to pick the pH up. In a standard aquarium, you would use baking soda, but that's mostly sodium. Plants don't like all that sodium. Now, what we can do, the calcium and potassium that you must supplement both come in basic form. So we can use I use calcium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide. You can also use carbonates if you want to be organic. You can use calcium carbonate, potassium carbonate, but they're slower to dissolve. It's harder to gauge how much you're putting in there. So if we were at, let's say, 6.5, we needed to come up to 7. One day I would put a little bit of potassium in the water and see what it does. The next day I put in a little bit of calcium and see what happens. And you just do that. You alternate those two day by day until you get back up to 7. And so you use equal but alternate additions of calcium and potassium in their basic form. The reason I use hydroxides is they dissolve immediately in the water. So if you use like a calcium carbonate, which is basically limestone, it takes a week, 2 weeks to dissolve. So you keep adding it and you keep adding it, and then when it all dissolves, your pH is at 10, and then everything's dead. So these are quite effective. They're caustic. Like if I were to fill this up with water, it would melt this bottle. So it's very caustic. But in 250 gallons of water, a couple flakes dissolves immediately, gets your pH up where it needs to be, doesn't add all the impurities that the carbonates have. Limestone's full of impurities, so you get all these other little rocks and minerals that you don't have control over anymore. So I use highly refined calcium and potassium additions.
How do you know how much to put? Like you
Trial and error.
trial and error?
Yeah, the what thing you want to do. So for this system, I start with about 10 grams for about this much water. And there's no exact amount that you know how to use because it's all affected by how much bacterial activity you have in the water.
Oh, wow.
And what your water composition is. If you have hard water full of calcium, you may never need to add calcium. You may just need to add potassium. But in Charlotte, we add alternate and equal additions of those. I'd start small and track that, record it, like on a piece of paper, weigh it on a scale. All right, I did 10 grams and it got me up to this. And so then you can start to gauge how much over the course of a year that you might need. But never overdo it. Fish can survive in 5.0 water. If it gradually happens over time, they can adapt, but they cannot take serious pH swings. And so you got to be like very like minute in your adjustments. So that's the first thing I do is test the pH. That's every day. You want to check pH. The most important thing besides water temperature is making sure that you got flowing water. The next one that we do, all these other 3 tests, the ammonia, the nitrite, and the nitrate, these are done once a week.
Okay.
And so these are really important. The way this works, the way that the plants interact with the fish is called nitrification. The fish release ammonia out of their gills and also out of their waste. Ammonia is highly toxic to fish and humans and most living things. But nature has created a set of bacteria, nitrifying bacteria, that eats ammonia in nature and releases it as nitrite. Nitrite is also toxic to most things, but there's a second set of nitrifying bacteria that consume the nitrite, turn it into nitrate, which is non-toxic and relative to us, and plants love it. So you have to have the bacteria that can convert the ammonia all the way over to nitrate form. That is the acid producing process that drops your pH. And that's what we monitor when we take these tests.
And
So-
is that the only way you know that you have those bacteria?
That's
just
it.
from the...
Now, yeah, you could do some
Because
lab
the
work
okay.
if you wanted to see the actual bacterias.
Yes,
But by reading these levels, we know what kind of,
it exists.
yeah.
Okay.
So when you first establish one of these, and you actually don't even need to inoculate it with bacteria, they'll just find it. They're airborne sometimes, and they'll get in the water. But at first, you're going to have high ammonia readings, and then you'll see those start to decline slowly, even though you're introducing the ammonia. You're giving them to the fish feed because they're only going to release what you feed them. So then you'll see your ammonia start to drop during your initial phases, and that means your first set of bacteria is working. Then your nitrites start to spike because they're releasing that ammonia as nitrite, and then you'll see that start to fall. And then your nitrates, when they start to show up, that's when you can really start to grow. And then that happens forever. Like once you get that going, as long as you don't dump a bunch of bleach in there and kill everything, then you'll have that process going forever.
So when you start one of these up, can you like fill it up, put the chlorinator, and then you just put fish in, or how long do you?
I wouldn't do
wait?
that because that's a great question. Some people, it's called cycling, this
Yeah.
process. And some people do that, but you're going to lose some fish, likely, because they're going to have an ammonia toxicity.
Yeah.
What professionals do is they actually just put ammonia hydroxide in the water at a rate of 4 parts per million, to dump it in until you get 4 parts per million, and then you just maintain that level until you see it start to get decreased, and you keep feeding that ammonia in there. You're going to put the same ammonia in every day, but you're going to see your ammonia start going down, and that means that bacteria is starting to eat it up. And so then you'll have the whole process start taking place. Once you have 0 ammonia, but you're adding it every day, and it's coming to be nitrate, that means you have fully
So
colonized.
Then you can put fish in.
Then you can put fish in.
And then what would you be able to use, like aquarium starter chemicals that you can just buy at the pet store?
And that's just concentrated bacteria. Yep, you can do that. That's a quick way to do it too. If you want to do it, if you want to do fish immediately, you can get the instant start stuff, but it's really expensive.
Yeah.
But it's worth it if you want to grow some food. So we test these once a week, and you can do all those tests in this test kit here.
And how do you? So you get the ammonia hydroxide.
It's just cleaning ammonia.
So where do you get that?
Actually, the only place to get ammonia that doesn't have scented chemicals in it is Dollar Tree. I'm serious. Harris Teeter, you cannot get pure ammonia anymore. It's all like ammonia with lemon or something like that.
Oh, I
You don't
see.
want any of that stuff. The only place that I found pure ammonia hydroxide is Dollar Tree. And it's $1. Now you can also you could just pee in the water and introduce that too, but you might have E. coli.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But there are people who've inoculated the ammonia with urine, so that's another way that you can do it.
Interesting.
But your siblings or whatever might think it's gross.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let me add to it.
Yeah.
And that nitrate cycle is what goes on at the wastewater treatment plants.
Yes,
And
that's
big,
exactly
big
what
tanks.
So it
happens.
is okay.
Activated sludge systems. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we just met with a guy from Charlotte Water last week.
Oh,
And,
really? Who?
his
his name Will Rice?
Will Rice.
Oh my God, he's a beekeeper too.
Yeah.
Yes, I work with him.
Yeah, he just came to one of my
I knew it had
greenhouses,
to have
and he
been
was
him.
like, your students could work at the plant.
Yes. Yes.
He was like, they already know everything.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then-
that's funny. I got to
so
email him.
when your pH drops, you add one of these things, and that supplements those missing minerals and gets your pH up. The third one,
Where do you get that?
online. Yep, I order both of these online. And they're in your guide. They're potassium hydroxide and calcium hydroxide. The third one is iron.